In this video, I'm just going to have a little bit of a conversation about my thoughts on Xdefiant and where I think it's going. If I think Xdefiant's going to succeed, or if I think Xdefiant is going to be a flop for Ubisoft. And ultimately, I will give my final thoughts at the end, and I will give it a score as in like a review score. I do think that obviously it's a beta or a server test, so we have to keep our minds closed as it will eventually change and some stuff will be changed. But this is my current thoughts on the current state of Xdefiant and what I think the game should do or what the game should change to make it better. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. If you enjoy, please hit the like button. If you really enjoy, subscribe. And yeah, that's all for me. I hope you enjoy. Honestly, this is more of a rant. Don't expect a constructed, well put together thought. That video will be coming later. This is just my initial quick thoughts on the current state of Xdefiant. First things first has to be gameplay. Gameplay has to be the most important thing for Xdefiant to now. It is what they are basing their entire purpose of this game on. Honestly, in my personal opinion from playing it, it feels kinda clunky. Not even just the movement, just the gunplay with the movement, with everything else feels kind of clunky. I don't know, maybe I just didn't get used to it in my short time playing, but it didn't feel great. Also, in the grand scheme of things, I really don't think that the movement was as good as it was in previous times. I think previous iterations of Xdefiant did the movement a little bit better. Ultimately, the movement felt smoother in the original beta that I played instead of how it feels now. I do think that they've cut back on the movement a lot, and I feel like that is because they're realizing that the casual player base is more important than they were giving them credit for. However, that is a risky thing to do. XDefiant based their entire game about not pushing towards casuals and to focus on the core gameplay. However, it feels like their more recent ventures have been about the casuals. I could be wrong, but I think the direction this game is heading is the worst thing possible for gameplay. It feels dumbed down, it feels easier to get used to, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for the longevity, however, it's a bad thing for retaining good players at your game, which we've seen for games like Fortnite and Rainbow Six Siege and other games along those lines. It is very important to have a casual player base, but it is also just as important to have a hardcore, die-hard player base. Now, with that being said, I think the gameplay has potential, as it's always had. The gameplay has permanently had potential, but I do, again, think there's flaws. Now, the question is, do I think Ubisoft will fix those flaws that I think are definitely prevalent in the gameplay? I do not. I do not think that Ubisoft is going to focus on the gameplay. I think it's now about shipping this game and making money back on it ASAP. Ubisoft's going through a lot of financial problems recently, and I think this is a game that they're hoping will get them out of those problems. However, I don't think this game will do that. I think Star Wars Outlaws is bound to be a failure, knowing Ubisoft, and I think Xdefiant is bound to go down the same path. I also have a dire fear that gameplay is going to be pushed towards microtransactions, meaning pay to win. I could be wrong, but I definitely do think that that is where that's heading. I think Ubisoft has done it plenty of times in the past, and it feels like that's the direction they're going. Hopefully, I am wrong, and gameplay is not centered around microtransactions, but I'm just throwing that out there as a be warned. Do not be surprised if Ubisoft decides to go down that path. Now, let's talk about the operators, or whatever they're called. I forgot the name of them. The operators, we'll call them in this game, are not bad. They have identity. The ultimates feel fun to use for the most part, and I definitely think that they've thought them through well. The Ubisoft charm is definitely here, however, I do think there are problems. The one and most important problem, I think, with the operators are some ultimates are just simply busted. If you're playing against somebody with the healer operator, you're not winning. The Far Cry operator's healing is insane. Their ultimate, you literally cannot kill them. It is a free 5 kills if you pop it in the right place. It's absurd, and I get that it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it is oppressive and it is obnoxious. Then you have the Splinter Cells Ultimate. That is a one shot pretty much every single time and a free 5 kills. It is an absurd ultimate that, again, if used properly, will be a free tons of kills. It's basically a free, fun way of winning. And yes, it is fun way of winning. It is a fun thing to use. However, it's not a competitive thing to use, so they've really got to make up their mind whether they're going to focus on casuals or if they're going to focus on hardcores. Because right now the game feels like casual fun, which is fine. However, they've said that they want it to be a more competitive shooter. They've focused on no skill based matchmaking. They want it to be fun, but they also want it to be fun in the sense that competitive players can get a thrive out of it. Right now, I don't see that vision, and I think that they're splitting their attention between two completely different player bases, and it's going to hinder them in the long run. Now, I want to talk about maps because this is my favorite thing about the game. The maps are fantastic. The artwork is beautiful. The actual map layout is fantastic. I don't think I played a bad map. Every map has its own charm, every map has its own purpose, and I think that is a good thing for this game. I think it definitely stands out from the Call of Duty 3 lane meta that has been going on with COD developers that they've stuck to relentlessly. However, it doesn't feel like Xdefiant went that route, or they really didn't. Every map has a diverse layout, every map feels fun, every map is different. Every map has a purpose for being there as well, and that is also because this game, tries to collect the Ubisoft feel from like a bunch of different games, and they nailed it in my opinion. Every map feels intriguing. Every map feels fun. And I think that is where this game needs to focus its attention. If you're going to make good maps and then have mediocre gameplay, you can live. As long as your game has fun content, if the gameplay is mediocre, your game can still survive. However, I fear that the maps are going to slow down because the attention to detail cannot be this good every single time. In a live service title, you've got to push out content 24/7. You have to make sure that you're constantly adapting. However, pushing out maps that have this much detail, this much thought is never easy. And in a live service sense, that is going to take a lot longer. In the long run, I think Xdefiant's maps are going to get less unique. They're going to get less thought out. They're going to get less intriguing. I think the gameplay is going to severely lack in the future. And I think we're really heading towards a downfall if they don't find a way to make the gameplay feel fresh. If they don't find a way to make the gameplay feel unique, because it feels too much like Call of Duty. It feels too much like they were copying Call of Duty. And that is the problem that I'm going to discuss now. Now, in this final section, I just want to get some quick more thoughts out, which is I feel like Xdefiant is going to run into the problem that it's just Call of Duty. Why would you play Call of Duty when you can play a free game, you might be asking? Well, it's because Call of Duty has a campaign. Even though if it's not good, it still has it. Call of Duty has a third game mode. Even if it's not good, it's still there. And they have multiplayer, which again, even if it's not good, it's still there. In the grand scheme of things, you get more bang for your buck and you have more things to occupy your mind. Ultimately, this game I don't believe is going to give you that. I think it ultimately falls short on trying to be different from Call of Duty. The operators are a good touch, but it's just not enough. The gameplay is too much like Call of Duty. It's just too much like Call of Duty, and whether Ubisoft's going to find a way to stop that, I'm not sure. I think they brought in Call of Duty people to make a Call of Duty clone, and just like every other clone that try to copy Call of Duty like Battlefield did, it's just not going to work. Now, in the grand scheme of things, to sum this all up in a more disciplined way, I think Xdefiant is, in the grand scheme of things, a Call of Duty clone that is not good. It is an Ubisoft title to and through. It's a cheap version of Call of Duty. It was made to be a cheap version of Call of Duty. It almost feels like a cash grab, so to speak. It feels like Ubisoft knows they're running out of money, they're running out of time to make money, And with Star Wars Outlaws being still a decent way away, they need a game after that or before that to start making some revenue. And I think Xdefiant was supposed to be the game before that to make revenue. It got delayed and delayed, delayed. And now I feel like it's under pressure to be a lot more than it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a cash grab Call of Duty clone that would make some money and be that. However, now with its delays, it's become more expensive and it's no longer viable to just be a Call of Duty clone. They need money, and they need money from this game. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think this game and Star Wars Outlaws will put Ubisoft to sell or put them into bankruptcy. So, in the grand scheme of things, no. I don't think Xdefiant will be a success. I don't think Xdefiant will be a success in any way, shape, or form. However, I do think Xdefiant has potential. I think Xdefiant is a good game. And I do think that if it was made by literally anybody but Ubisoft, it would succeed. However, it's made by Ubisoft, and I have zero faith that the company can bring it together. Thanks for watching my rant on Xdefiant. I hope you enjoyed. More of my normal content is coming soon. If you really like this content, it will be out more consistently. All you have to do is hit the like button to show me that you actually like this content, and I will deliver on them a little bit more. I like ranting about video games, and if it does well, then, well, I will continue to do it. Thanks for watching, and have a